All right, aloha kako. Thank you so much for joining us today for our latest Compassionate Koʻolaupoko speaker series. Before we begin, we are going to play a short video on what is Compassionate Koʻolaupoko, thanks to Pop Media Hawaii who put it together. See, wrong one.
I am Derek Minakami, and I am on the steering committee of Compassionate Koʻolaupoko, and I'm also the principal of Kaneohe Elementary School. Compassionate Koʻolaupoko is a collaborative initiative between the Kailua, Kalaheo, and Castle complexes of the Hawaii Department of Education, Windward Community College, and the Harold K. Castle Foundation. And our purpose is to help our moku, Koʻolaupoko, become trauma-informed and more resilient so that we can better support the youth in our area. You know, a lot of times when kids experience something at home that's traumatic, the behaviors that they display at school will often be a defense mechanism and will be an aggression, or it might result in depression. So with Compassionate Koʻolaupoko, what we want to do is to turn the tide for those children, to build within them a sense of resiliency, what we call protective factors, so that even though they may experience more trauma in their lives, they can, well, not just survive, but really thrive despite that. One of the big things that we were able to do was provide training for our schools in trauma-informed education. We provided them with opportunities to design their own social-emotional learning program to help support students and teach them about compassion and about how to be a better friend, a better student, a better family member through the design thinking process. We also heard from our community that they want to hear more stories about the good things that are happening in Koʻolaupoko. So we've sponsored a speaker series. So every month we feature different speakers who have their own perspective and their own expertise in the area of trauma and how to address it and how to bring about healing in the community. You know, we're just beginning. We see ourselves as in a very nascent stage where we're coming together, we're learning from one another, but it's creating and sparking this energy. And we feel like we're building a momentum in the community in looking at and getting excited about how we can better help and work with each other to support the youth and to support our families. It's funny because Compassionate Koʻolaupoko is not a nonprofit. You know, we're not a branch of the DOE. It's really just friends who have gotten together to say, hey, you know, let's do something good for our community. Let's see if we can bring other people who just want to do good for our community together. It's more like a potluck party for our neighbors, you know, and I think we really see our efforts and our volunteer work with this initiative more akin to that. It's really about creating a community movement. And so I really am thankful for our steering committee members. I'm thankful for our advisory council. I'm thankful for all of our volunteers who are making this effort happen. A lot of this would not have been possible without funding support and as well as technical support from the Novo Foundation, Education First, the Rockefeller Foundation, and we also have Nale Aloha Foundation who's been supporting our efforts as well. They really have helped guide us, help provide some resources so that we can bring people together and make sure that those conversations happen. If you think about, you know, back at the farm, right? We bring our kids up to the farm and they prepare the lo'i, they plant the kalo. But the kalo that they plant, they will not eat. It's going to be the next generation of students that go to the farm that actually enjoy the fruits of that labor. The kalo that they eat was planted by the kids that were at the farm the previous year. And I think that's what we see happening in Compassionate Koʻolaupoko. You know, we're investing for the future. And it's not to reap any sort of benefit that's immediate, but it's really about strengthening this area so that it can flourish, so it can be vai-vai, so that everyone can be fed, so that everyone can do well. It's not to say that we're going to get rid of trauma, because you're never going to get rid of that. But it's really about giving people the resources and tools so that they can survive that, and they can do better despite that.
Aloha and welcome. Thank you for joining us today for our speaker series, Compassionate Koʻolaupoko. And today our featured speaker is Dr. Ashley Ono, who is a resident of Koʻolaupoko, practices medicine, and the two of us actually met through a mutual connection, Uncle Pono Shim. Actually, I should even call him Uncle because we're close in age. So he's just Pono to me. And I think, the connection or the lokahi that we share, Dr. Ono and I, is that we were both seeking something more that we found to be missing in our professional lives. And I think today, we have a special treat in hearing Dr. Ono's journey through her medical practice and finding meaning through that and peace and how to better heal others as well as herself. And so I think in the middle of this pandemic, when so many people are talking about self-care or care for others, Dr. Ono has a special gift of experience and reflection and thought that she shares with us today. And so I welcome and thank Dr. Ono for being here today and for helping Compassionate Koʻolaupoko spread its message of compassion and empathy. So thank you again, Ashley, for joining us. And I'll turn it over to you. I'm going to make you the host.
Okay,
I'll stop
mahalo.
sharing.
Okay, let's see. Okay. All right, sorry, I'm getting used to driving on Zoom, so bear with me. And I saw some of the comments about the black boxes on the screen. So if that happens, or if that's happening right now, flag me down so I can close up these boxes and maybe it'll, hopefully you guys can see. Okay. So mahalo for having me. A disclaimer, just before we get started, I do live in Koʻolaupoko. I live in Waimanalo, and I'm home today from work. I have a day off, and we have lots of chickens and roosters, and I have doggies outside. So if you hear them in the background, my apologies, but hopefully you can enjoy with me as we share together. This is more like a real casual time for me to talk story and share. And so if anybody has questions or wants to chime in, please feel free. I'm going to share my journey today through healing, using and learning things about mindfulness and aloha and hana. I am a doctor. I'm an internal medicine physician, adult medicine. And I started my practice 10 years ago as a hospital physician, meaning I took care of patients that were really, really sick, that needed to stay in the hospital overnight or sometimes longer because they were acutely ill. And my training taught me how to fix and how to help patients and families. And initially, I think I was really excited to do that when I first started practice. But helping and fixing, as I progressed in my practice, I found that I felt like it wasn't enough. It's hard to fix someone that has a disease that doesn't have a cure. It's hard to fix someone that has a condition that you don't have medications to address or help. And so, as time went on, I began to feel like what I was doing wasn't working. And patients had a lot of anxiety and sadness and grief in the hospital. And I just didn't know how to interact with those emotions. And so I did what I was trained to do for myself. And I tried to start fixing myself. And I started to look for things to do. So the literature would say, you should have work-life balance. And so I tried to balance that out and work less. And I tried to work out some more and eat better and go on really fun vacations. I tried to get massages and lomi and do all these things. But at the end of all of that, those were temporary fixes. And I still had this lingering anxiety that I didn't know what was going on and that somebody was going to find out that I didn't know what the heck was happening. And I was filled with a lot of fear. And so kind of like this doctor here, I was at my wit's end, really contemplating finding something else to do, finding a different job, finding a different place to be, because I felt like I just didn't fit. And at the time, no one was talking about their struggle. Everybody seemed like they were just operating like stealth, operating at the top of their game. Nothing bothered them. Nothing could faze them. And I was in the background kind of suffering by myself. And so I realized, this is a quote by another doctor that teaches relationship-centered care over at UCSF. But I realized that I was trying to fix and help. And I love what she says about fixing and helping create distance between people. But we can't serve at a distance. We can only serve that to which we are profoundly connected. And I had no idea how to connect with myself, connect with others, connect to my environment. I was really at a distance. And I was really searching for something that would help me. So on a whim, I somehow came across mindfulness meditation. And I started researching what it was. All I had known up to that point was that meditation was sitting and closing your eyes and sitting in this lotus position and trying to clear your mind from all thought. And I thought that I can't do that. That's crazy. And it was also, just all I had known up to that point was that it was like a new age practice is what I thought in my mind. And it was kind of hippie and granola-ish. And I was very rational and I was very skeptical. But I was willing to try anything because I was really suffering in silence. And so I signed up for this online mindfulness-based stress reduction program. And I could do it in the comfort and secrecy of my own home. And it was for 8 weeks. And all it asked me to do was to sit and close my eyes and watch my breath or scan my body and just to sit there and watch what happened, to just notice it. Really what mindfulness was asking me to do was to pay attention in a particular way. Yeah, pay attention on purpose in the present moment, not thinking about the past or worrying about what's going to happen in the future, and without judgment. So the judgment part for me was huge because I always judge what I'm thinking. I judge people, I judge interactions. And what mindfulness was asking me to do as a meditation was just to leave that be and just notice things. That's all I had to do. So one thing about paying attention was that I was really good at paying attention. I think we're all really good at paying attention in some way. If we've had to sit through years of training to do something, you can pay attention, you can memorize, you can regurgitate facts back to whatever examiner you need to. But paying attention in a particular way was something that I needed to really relearn. So this is a video that's going to ask you to pay attention. Yeah, you're going to pay attention, if we can, pay attention to the people in this video and to how many times the basketball gets passed to, I think it's the people in the black shirts. Let me just see if there's no sound for this. Oh, maybe there is sound. Did you guys get it? All right, so it should have been 16. And when I first saw this video, I got the 16 and I was like, yes. But then it asks if you notice anything else. So when I started meditating, paying attention for me was like I could focus in on my breath and I could focus in on what I was feeling in my hands or my feet or anywhere else. But I started to notice other more expansive things. And I think one of the really important things was that I had this relaxed awareness, not so much tight where I'm just trying to count how many times the gorilla is passing it or the person is passing the basketball, but paying attention in a way where I can see a broader perspective of what's going on. There was a study that was done many years ago, and it was a real small study on this exact issue of paying attention. So this study was done with like 24 radiologists, people that look at things like CAT scans like this, or X-rays, or other imaging studies. And they asked these radiologists to look at CAT scans of the lung. So the lung tissue is supposed to look all black like this. So you're looking for normal lung tissue usually, but you're also looking for abnormalities like masses or fluid or blood or something else that looks off. You're trained to look for both the normal and specific abnormalities. What was interesting was embedded in these scans was a little gorilla. And 83% of the radiologists that read these scans missed the gorilla, which tells us that, if you pay attention in a particular way and you're only looking for the normal and the things that you expect to be abnormal, you're going to miss things like this. And so I think what that told me and what that illustrated to me was that I need to be able to have a practice that helps me to pay attention, but helps me to pay attention in a way that I can see all of the unexpected things that pop up, to pay attention in a way that's open and inviting. And so part of my skepticism over meditation was, what's happening in my brain when I'm paying attention and when I'm not paying attention. And there's a lot of neuroscience about this. This is only one of the few slides that I have about like real medical stuff, but there's a region in your brain called the default mode network. And that's the area of the brain that is active when you're resting, when you're daydreaming. It's the place in your brain that's responsible for reflecting on yourself, on your interactions, for envisioning what the future might hold. And it's the place of the brain that protects us, because we're always evaluating whether something is a threat or a risk. Interestingly, in folks that experience anxiety and depression and PTSD, there's a correlation with increased activity in this area of the brain. So that's usually when you're not paying attention in a particular way. This is the area of the brain that's more active. I like to think of the default mode network as the area where I go that I perpetually scroll. So, like if you're on your phone and you scroll through Instagram or TikTok or your news feed, sometimes if you're not paying attention, for me, it can be like 30 minutes and I've spent 30 minutes looking at videos of doggies playing or puppies doing whatever. And I think that's what happens in the brain when we're not paying attention. But the other question that I had from a scientific aspect was, what's happening when I meditate? Because undoubtedly I would sit down and I would try to focus on my breath, try as hard as I could in a relaxed, open way. And then I would get distracted. Like this guy from Up, whenever I try to do something really important, I'd see squirrels. And so what happens when you meditate is that you go and your brain is active in the intention network. So you're focusing on the breath, or you're focusing on a part of the body. And then your mind wanders. You think of what you're going to have for lunch, or what you got to do later on tonight, or you're thinking about an interaction that you had in the past. Is that person mad at me? This is what I want to say to this person. And then you catch yourself and you bring yourself back to whatever you're focusing your attention on, which is either your breath or your body. And that whole cycle is what's happening when you meditate. And part of what happens is I started to feel like, gosh, if I can get better at this, I'm going to be golden. Like if I can meditate like a master, then I will never experience anxiety or fear or really strong emotions that I don't like. But practicing in this way, really what it was doing was I wasn't getting better. I was just noticing more, and I was cultivating an ability to be with whatever popped up in my thoughts, in my body. And that translated into relationships. So meditation was a way for me to connect mind and body. There were formal meditations like the body scan or breathing or noting practice, where you just notice things, what you see, what you hear, what you feel. There was a practice on loving kindness, where you wish those around you to be well, to be safe, to be healthy, to live with ease. And then there was also times where I could just meditate informally, right? We live really busy lives, and not always did I have time to sit and watch my breathing for a couple minutes. So in those times when I really couldn't, I just practiced things like washing dishes meditation. So I feel the water on my hands, or watch the way that the soap suds gathered as I clean things, or do laundry meditation, or driving to work meditation. One day I was driving home from work, and I was on the Pali, and I was stuck in traffic, and I was right by those Pali tunnels. And I was noticing that I was getting so frustrated because I wanted to be out of traffic, and I just wanted to be home already. And something just told me, okay, well, just notice, do driving home from work meditation. And I started to look around, and I noticed all this mamaki on the side of the road. I don't know if you guys noticed that too, but unexpected. And it brought me so much joy. So really what mindfulness helped me to do was to cultivate some of these principles, having a beginner's mind, being curious, not being judgmental. Part of that cycle of meditation where you focus your attention on something, you wander and you come back, teaches you that you can't strive. There's no striving in that. The purpose is not to get better, and it's not to get attached to a specific goal about how you want your meditation to go, but just to be along for the experience. Mindfulness taught me patience and equanimity. Equanimity is being able to be with whatever emotion pops up or comes your way. It taught me that even if an emotion came, it wasn't going to last forever. So there was an impermanence. As quickly as anger or sadness or joy or excitement would come, those would also leave, replaced by something different. And most of all, I think mindfulness taught me to trust my na'au, to trust the connection with my body and my mind. And I started to not only cultivate a connection to self, to body and mind, but a connection to my surroundings and a connection to others around me. I love this quote by Viktor Frankl about the space between stimulus and response. There's a space, and in that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. So I really felt like before this practice, I was a victim. I was victim to whatever came my way, to whatever patient situation I was assigned. But now after doing this practice, I felt like, no, I I'm way more confident and I can trust what direction to go through. I didn't feel like I was reacting anymore. And I felt more like I could choose a response in that split second. It's not like I have to pause for a minute or 5 minutes, but just in a split second to notice that I have a chance to choose and to reclaim it. So I started also noticing things about my surroundings. And I think I mentioned, all that I knew about meditation before this was that it had Eastern roots. And I remember seeing it in New Age practices, but also remember seeing it like during the hippie era. And there was a part of me that was ashamed that I was doing this. And there was also a part of me that wasn't quite sure if there was a space for meditation as a Native Hawaiian. And I was scared that I was doing something that I wasn't supposed to be doing. But as I meditated and as I noticed, I could notice things like the sun rising and the clouds in the sky. And I could notice the wind and how it changed. And I would notice the moon and how the different phases of the moon would present herself. I could see the rain and how the rain sometimes was a light rain, sometimes it was rain that fell in sheets. And I started to understand that our kupuna had all these different names for winds and all these different names for rains. And they planted by the moon, and they fished by the moon, and they did all these things based on their connection to their environment. So this olalo no eau I kanana no kaike, that's what I was learning, that just by observing, paying attention in the present moment without judgment was helping me to relearn things that I think our kupuna inherently knew. And it was as if these mele in which they describe the rains and the winds and these oli that I had learned before, it was like I was rediscovering them. And they were reminders from our kupuna that, hey, you cannot be caught up in the future or living in the past. You need to also reground and recenter yourself in the present moment. So that took me to more curiosity and more searching, because I felt like, hey, if our kupuna did this and I'm able to feel this connection, there's got to be another way that this connection is described. And I started to wonder if there was a connection or similarities between what I was learning with mindfulness meditation and the practice of aloha. Because up to that point, all I knew about aloha was love. Aloha is love. But how that was love or how that was practiced, I really didn't know. So I searched Google. I did a Google search for mindfulness and aloha, and a journal article popped up with Pono Shim as a co-author. And so I thought, oh, okay, I better, this is a journal. It looks like it's official. So let me go look at this. And in it, he described his experience of aloha learning from Auntie Pilahi. And I was just blown away, because what I had learned in mindfulness about impermanence and not striving and non-attaching and non-judgmentals, all of that seemed like it was explained in this journal article. So then I Googled Pono, because I had never heard of him. And I watched his long story short episode with Leslie Wilcox. And in it even more so, he describes the tenets of aloha. Ahonui, which is waiting for the moment. It's not just being patient, but it's waiting for the moment. It's almost like it's paying attention in a particular way, not too tense and not too passive, but just right. Akahai, which I initially thought was kindness, is more of grace and engaging in a way that doesn't cause trauma, leaving something better than I found it. Lokahi, which is, we initially think of unity, but actually means unbroken. And for somebody that always wants to fix something because I think it's broken, to understand that it's not broken, it's unbroken, and all you're doing is rediscovering, that was huge. Ha'a, going to empty. That reminded me of the breath and how I practice meditation and empty the breath, how to go to empty. And then olu olu, the way that Pono and Antipilahi describe it is like you're holding a baby, right? You're not going to hold the baby so tight that you smother it, but you're also not going to hold the baby too loosely so that you drop it, but you're going to hold it in a way that supports it and allows it to be. And so this experience of aloha connected, just improved all these relationships with people around me. Before, when I was practicing medicine, I was trying to fix things and everything was mainly a transaction. If somebody had an ailment, I would prescribe something. Or if somebody had a complaint or something that needed to be done, I would do it. I couldn't sit and listen and find a different way to be. But as I practiced aloha, I started to feel like work was more than just work. That the relationships I had with people, the relationships I had with patients were more about healing and less about fixing. And I remember being in a meeting years ago at work about incivility. And, we were all coming up, people were throwing out ideas about how to address incivility in the workplace, basically how to make nice and how to help everybody get along. And so one of the things that I proposed was that we learn more about aloha in the way that I had learned it from Pono. And someone on that call said, aloha, it's so overused and it seems too nice. I don't think it's not gonna help in this situation. And so I went back and I talked to Pono, and the way that sometimes things are misunderstood can really influence how we interact with each other. And so what I started to think was, okay, aloha is more, it's not a fix and it's not a transaction. It's more of a way to be. It's more of a lifestyle, a way to live. And my practice of aloha at work doesn't just feel like work. It feels like something more. And so Pono has a teaching on hana, and that hana is hana and work is work, and they're not the same things. Hana really took me back to the breath, to aloha. And the way that he describes it is that the ha in hana really comes from ha'aha'a, to find the moment of emptiness, to take yourself to empty. So as you do that, the N is for noa, which means unbridle or to unleash. And the last A is akahai, or grace, or to engage with white gloves in a way that doesn't cause trauma. So what I was practicing, whether it was at work in the hospital or somewhere else, was going to the moment of emptiness and unleashing grace in using my specific gifts and talents. A year or so ago, I think Pono shared this video, and I want to share it today just because he can explain it in a way that I think will bring all of this together. So let me do this right now.
The sound's not coming through.
Is there no sound?
Yeah, I think just gotta make sure that when you share the screen that you click on that optimize for video, and then the share sound button is clicked. So you might want to try stop sharing and then share again.
Okay. How do I stop sharing? Hmm.
On the top, I think there's a red bar that says stop share.
Oh, got it. Okay. Sorry, everyone. Okay, let me try this one more time. And then, so Derek, where's that red bar? Or try
no, I meant
one more time.
the button when you press share.
Mhm.
There's a optimize video and share sound. Yeah.
Okay, let me. Sorry.
No problem. So when you press share screen, look on the bottom left-hand corner.
Okay.
And then you see optimize for video down there someplace. And then share sound. There are two little check boxes on the bottom.
Okay, let me see.
If not, I can try and find a video. I know it's on the OEDB website.
Yeah. I'm not seeing the. Sorry, everyone.
Okay. Here, I'll share it for you.
Okay.
Oh, wait, can you make me host again? Just temporary. Well, I can just reclaim it. Okay. And then I'll give you the host again after.
One of my favorite books, and is very precious to me because it was given to me from Nanaviri, is Change We Must, which could be considered Jediism. The Hawaiian said, Hinane ka olelo. The language is a riddle, rich in metaphor. The Hawaiian language was melodious and graceful like the people. Before the missionaries came and converted the language into the written word, the Hawaiians used figures of speech in a language that was like poetry. This use of the language vanished long ago. Hawaiians today speak the missionary language, a literal type of Hawaiian. The riddle is gone. When Captain Cook came to Hawaii, now imagine the brilliance, innovation, the self-reliance, incredible amounts of food. Now they saw our effort, they saw our production, and they saw our effort as what? Work. They heard our word for work as hana. So they interpreted hana as work because they saw our effort as work. And it's not. What is work? Work is something that you do until you can find somebody else to replace you. That's not hana. Hana is hana and work is work, and they are not the same thing. Ha-na. Hana. Ha-na. As we ha, we na. As we express our ha, as we share our ha, as we go to a moment of emptiness, we na. And what is na? Comes from that word noa. Noa means to unleash, to set free, to unbridle, to liberate. Akahai. Kindness, grace. What is grace? Grace is you leave something better than you found it. So, na is unleashing grace. Leaving something better than you found it. Like what? Like the land. Like people. Like the rocks, like the trees, like the animals, the birds, the ocean. That didn't work. So as we ha, we na, as we express, we unleash grace.
There's no time restriction in the word hana, because you're doing it from your heart, from your core, from the last breath you get, and focusing on that particular situation. For our family, we're community builders, I'd like to say. And we also agriculture. So with that mash, I think we're trying to build this small community to make it food sustainable.
I've never thought of it as work. It's our lifestyle. You know, for us, we've gone to generations of this type of lifestyle.
So hana is hana. And it's not just the effort of work, it is sharing our hana. It's not work. Endearingly, emphatically, recover what it means to be ohana. Now, you have ohana. And so, what is the o? Antipilahi said there are certain words that have that o, only a very few. That is a very unique o. That o she defined as eternal, eternity. O hana, eternal hana. Because if you're part of an ohana, all that meant, all the members of an ohana, hana forever. That's a concept that we honor each person's hana. We have space for people to understand, recover, discover, innovate, improve their hana. And we honor and need each other's hana. That's ohana.
Limahuli is part of the Ahupa of Haena, which is in the Moku of Halilea. Really an amazing, amazing part of the Pai'aina of Hawaii. It was a valley full of abundance in food. This is really an Aina Momona. We moved forward with establishing the Hui Makainano Makana and creating Limahuli Garden here. It was a way of reestablishing that relationship for our people, for our community, back to the Aina. For us, that's our therapy, bro. We go down there and we take care of that. That's our therapy. For people like Uncle Tom, Hana was their way of reflecting that relationship to the land and to their community. And for him, it wasn't work. It was feeding. It was making your community healthy and making them whole, making things pono. It's really allowed us to regain that relationship to the Aina in a really reciprocal way. Every drop of sweat and every ounce that we put out comes back tenfold to us, to the health of our community.
And when I look at folks like David and Carol and Chipper and Holy, why are Chipper and Holy so successful in recovering the ahupua'a? It's because they're doing it as ohana. When people can understand the riddle which has been lost in its deep meanings, then they can start to understand the depth of the relationship that we had with space and place. When I share e ohana ho, for me it is actually a declaration now of our people. It's time to recover this riddle that is the foundation of who we are and the foundation of the prophecy that Antipilahi gave, which is in the 21st century the world will search for peace and they'll look to Hawaii because Hawaii is the key and that key is aloha. So if we want to be a community again, a healthy community where we just thrive, I believe that we go back and we look at and remember when was it that we thrived and what was that foundation that girded us during that time. And the foundation that girded us was Ohana. That Hana, not Ohana family, not Hana work. Ohana, eternal Hana.
All right, mahalo for sharing that, Derek. So one of the things, this video I saw before COVID. And so Pono and I had been talking about Hana, about how we express our Hana, how we make space for somebody else to express their Hana. And I was really struggling and wrestling with how do I do that? Where do I do that? And then COVID hit. And I remember initially being so mad, so upset, because we could see what COVID was doing, and we could see how sick people were getting, and we could see who was dying. And a lot of people that lost their lives were people in healthcare. And when I looked at being a doctor as work, I got so mad because I thought, I don't want to give my life for this. That's crazy. Like, I never expected to do that. But after looking at this video and really sitting and meditating with what my Hana was, I came to understand that my Hana, with all of the gifts and all of the experience that I had up to that point, my Hana was actually to run and to care for people that others were scared to care for, to serve people, not to fix them, not to help them, but to serve and connect with them in a way that allows them to know that they're not alone and that they're valued. And so when we were at the hospital, when COVID initially hit, I was part of the team of doctors that were assigned to all the COVID patients. And it was a time where we knew very little about COVID. And it was a time where there were no vaccines. And it was a time where I really felt like I had so much purpose, and my work was meaningful, and that it was Hana. And I did not anticipate COVID being year 2, but as that COVID experience evolved, I transitioned out of the COVID team and then continued to ask, okay, what is my Hana now? And how do I express it? And where do I express it? And ultimately decided that the next phase of me expressing my Hana would be to leave the hospital and to cultivate more relationships with patients in the clinic setting, where it's less chaotic and there's more time to sit and listen and serve. And so as we end, I just have some ponderings. Ponderings for things to think about, questions to ask, questions that I ask myself regularly. And I don't always have the answers, but I let the questions just sit with me. I always ask, can I find a moment to pause? And I pay attention to what comes up and what I can notice. In any interaction that I'm in, I try to always ask, how can you respond with aloha? Not the aloha love, but the aloha that's full of ahonui, akahai, lokahi, olu olu, and ha'a. When I look at what I participate in and where I serve, I'm always asking myself, what is my Hana and how can I express it? Not what is my work, and not how I want to work as a doctor, but what is my Hana as a whole human being? And then the last question I ask is, how can I make space for others to express their Hana? You know, I might want somebody to do a job a certain way, but how am I making space for them to do it in their own special way, in the way that suits them, in the way that uses their authentic gifts and talents? How can I not cause trauma or colonize them, but allow them to be and express? And I want to end with this poem, one of my most favorite poems by Rumi. It's called The Guest House. And I think a lot of this journey in healing has been about being able to invite whatever comes my way, not to push it away, not to dwell on it, but to just let it be. And to understand that it's not going to be permanent, that we're always evolving and changing. But it's the guest house. And it says, this being human is a guest house. Every morning, a new arrival, a joy, a depression, a meanness, some momentary awareness comes as an unexpected visitor. Welcome and entertain them all, even if they're a crowd of sorrows who violently sweep your house empty of its furniture. Still, treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. The dark thought, the shame, the malice, meet them at the door laughing and invite them in. Be grateful for whoever comes, because each has been sent as a guide from beyond. So mahalo for inviting me to share, and I want to open it up to see if anyone has comments or questions or anything.
You know what, you can type into the chat and I will help monitor that too for Dr. Aloha.
Share a little bit.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Candace. You go.
I was saying, you shared a little bit about your workplace and how you switched this to be more of a way of being. How did you sort of maybe share with colleagues or get others on board?
Yeah, you know, one of the things was I felt like I needed to be vulnerable and just open it up to people and start talking about what I was doing. And so one day somebody was reading an article about mindfulness, and I started to have a discussion with another colleague and said, you know, I practice mindfulness. And we started talking about it, and we realized that there were a lot of other people that wanted to talk about mindfulness and people that were interested in learning about it. What that did was we created mindfulness-based stress reduction classes at Straub for a couple of years. And you know, what I thought was so shameful, a lot of other people were experiencing, and they wanted to talk and connect. And we had some really, really rich discussions in those groups. But I think for me, the thing that I realized was that I have to be open and vulnerable and not worry so much about what other people are going to think, but understand that if I'm struggling, there's got to be other folks that are wrestling with some of the same things.
Thanks.
So Evalani Harris, mahalo for your comment. Meditation is definitely like kilo. Yeah, and that's one of the things that, I don't know if the right word is validation, but as we started to kilo, I've taken a few classes where you kilo, especially I'm in a group called Hina Circles with Hi'ilani Shibata, and we learn about the mahina. And part of that process is kilo. And when I realized that, you know, we are asked to kilo and asked to pay attention and observe, I felt like, my goodness, I've been doing this for so long. Even though this is called meditation, it's a big portion of it is kilo. And so, yeah, you're very, very right.
Asked who or where did you take your 8 weeks of learning opportunity with?
Yeah, so I did the initial 8-week mindfulness-based stress reduction course. I did it online. And that can be found, I think it's Palouse Mindfulness, Palouse Mindfulness, and it's free. And you don't have to register or anything for it. And then after I did that, I found someone that was teaching it here in Oahu. And his name is Richard Hennessy. And he offers mindfulness-based stress reduction courses for 8 weeks long. And that was really great because then I got to do it in a group setting. And he was actually one of the code leaders with me when we brought it to Strub.
Where need presents itself and before help is offered, any tips for suspending judgment to deal with what is instead of what you think it is? Example, to unleash grace.
Yeah. I think the most helpful thing for me is just to pause, to recognize and to feel that I want to kind of propel forward and either fix something or take something over for someone else. What helps me the most is to pause and to breathe, and to somehow the breath helps me to ground back and to take a moment and just kind of hold up and take notice. So for me, that's why meditation is so important. In addition to kilo and noting and observing, but just having a formal practice where I can follow the breath in those spaces where I'm doing something or engaged in an activity and something pops up. If I can recognize to go back to the breath, usually that's enough of a split second pause for me to recognize, oh, okay, let me just pause and suspend judgment, pause and see where this goes.
Pono talks about when you practice ha'a, exactly what you're saying, noticing what's happening, but also noticing what's not being said or what's not happening. Do you have anything, that triggers, in your practice?
Yeah. Ha'a being empty is so important for me because sometimes I come to interactions full, right? I think, okay, this is how I'm going to prepare for this discussion that I need to have with this certain patient or this colleague, and I have an agenda. And sometimes getting rid of that agenda and just seeing what's being said, watching what's not said, watching how someone holds themselves or not, being able to notice that gives me so much insight about how to respond in the next moment.
Bring this to our students, of course, a group that mentors, etc. Sorry, I'm on Hawaii Island.
Yeah, I think actually, I think the mindfulness-based stress reduction courses currently, because of COVID, they're being offered virtually online, and so I think that's a definite possibility. I'm not, to do mindfulness-based stress reduction. There's a course in order to lead it, to be a teacher of it. And I just haven't done that portion of it. But if you would like Richard's contact info, I could reach out to him and provide it to you.
There would be Mickey and Education Incubators Foundations of Aloha course, and oftentimes Pono makes a guest appearance on some of the sessions that they have. It's geared towards families and perfect for students as well. So that might be also another option. Put the link in the chat, and then also Tracy Ann Chakis also provided some other links to some mindfulness resources. So thank you, Tracy Ann, for doing that. Oh, Candice and I were thinking the same thing at the same time.
Yeah, I've done Foundations of Aloha with Mickey and Heijong, and I love it. Some of what I love is that you have mindfulness meditation, And then I have this practice of Aloha and Hana. They kind of meld it all together, and it's in a kind of circles group. So you get to talk story with people and learn from others that are sharing. So it's really, really great.
One last question. Do you have advice on how to search for Native Hawaiian answers or frameworks like the ones you found? What are the keywords, or what are the sites or other resources that you have found?
You know, a lot of times I go back to Pono and I talk with him, or his Aloha response cohorts have been immensely helpful. I feel so blessed that in my initial Google search for mindfulness and Aloha, he popped up, and I feel like our kupuna were guiding me in that way. But at this point, I go to people that I know and recognize it. I don't necessarily search Google anymore, just because there's so many resources, and now it's mainly just organic and kind of word of mouth, and establishing relationships with people who know other people, and kind of discovering things that way.
Yeah, you know who's on Hawaii Island, Ivalani, that also is someone that Ashley and I both are connected to, and with Pono, is Mahina Pashandort. I think she's operating and living, largely on Hawaii Island now. So she might be a good person to connect with. We haven't posted her talk yet. That's my fault, but we'll be posting it soon. But if you want to connect with her, please let me know. And like, oh, you know Mahina, very good. Yeah, she's an excellent resource as well. And then thank you everyone for sharing the resources. And thank you, Dr. Ono, for sharing today. We really appreciate. I'm going to reclaim host just. But thank you for sharing today. We really appreciate the mo'olelo of your journey, and what has brought you to this point, especially navigating the storm of this pandemic. We appreciate your observations and lessons that you learned, and hopefully it's something that we can also share, through Compassionate Koʻolaupoko to help others. So I appreciate that.
Mahalo. Yeah, mahalo for having me.
So once again, everyone, mahalo for coming out today. We really appreciate you being here. Want to thank Dr. Ashley Ono once again today. What a great talk, a good session for learning. Really appreciate it. Mahalo, everyone. Take care and be safe.